Hall of Fame legend Ted Williams described Camilo Pascual's curveball as one of the most feared in all of the American League. Camilo led the American League in strikeouts in 1961, 1962, and 1963. He finished 10th overall for the decade with 1,391 strikeouts, and he had 200 or more strikeouts in a season 4 times. During the decade, he won 20 or more games twice, finished with a decade total of 127 wins, and he had a very respectable ERA of 3.36. With both the Washington Senators and the Minnesota Twins, he was a 5-time All-Star that had a career total of 132 complete games, including 36 shutouts, and his career total for strikeouts was over 2,100, which ranks him 71st on the all-time list. Despite only pitching for 6 seasons during the 1960s, 9th place goes to Pittsburgh Pirate Bob Veal. Veal was the 1964 National League strikeout king with an even 250 Ks, and that season he reached a career high with 18 victories. For the decade, Veal whipped 1,428 batters to go along with an even 100 wins, 73 complete games, and a very impressive ERA of 2.83. Veal finished up his career as a reliever with the Boston Red Sox, but he stuck around in Pittsburgh long enough to be part of their 1971 championship season. He finished his 13-year career with 120 victories, an ERA of 3.07, and 1,703 strikeouts. In 8th place, with 1,435 strikeouts for the decade, another Minnesota Twin, Mr. Jim Kaat. Kaat never led the league in strikeouts, but in 1966 he led the league in just about everything else. That included 25 wins, 19 complete games, 304 innings pitched, and strikeout related, a strikeout to walk ratio of 3.73. Kaat finished the decade, along with all of those strikeouts, with 142 wins, including 102 complete games, and an ERA of 3.27. His nearly 2,500 career strikeouts ranks him 44th all time. In 7th place is Cincinnati Red Jim Maloney. Jim struck out 1,585 batters during the decade, and he also won 15 or more games 6 times, including 2 seasons where he won 20 or more games. Twice in 1965, Jim Maloney pitched 10 hitless innings. The first time was in June against the New York Mets, where in the 11th inning he gave up a solo home run and lost the game 1-0. The second game was in August against the Chicago Cubs. He would throw 187 pitches while striking out 12 batters and finally won the game in the 10th inning, 1-0. 4 years later, Maloney would throw his second career no-hitter against the Houston Astros. Maloney's career was unfortunately shortened due to injuries, but he still finished with 134 career wins and a very impressive ERA of 3.19. For reasons that I don't understand, the top of this list is dominated by National League pitchers. But coming in at sixth place is Cleveland Indian legend Sam McDowell. Sam struck out 1,663 batters during the decade, and for his career he struck out 2,453 batters, which ranks him 45th all-time. Sam led the American League in strikeouts 4 times, and he is the only American League pitcher in the 1960s to strike out 300 or more batters in a single season, that coming in 1965 when he whiffed 325 batters. In 1970, Sam would once again go over 300 strikeouts, and his 20 wins and 2.92 ERA would propel him to finish 3rd in American League Cy Young voting. For the decade, Sam was a 4-time All-Star with 89 wins, 19 shutouts, and a very, very impressive ERA of 2.95. 5th place goes to 8-time All-Star Juan Marichal. Now we are into some truly elite pitchers, and Juan Marichal is no exception. Not only did he strike out 1,840 batters during the 1960s, he won 20 or more games 6 times, including 3 times with 25 or more victories. With 191 wins and a decades-long 2.57 ERA, it really is a shame that Juan Marichal only got to pitch 12 innings during the postseason in the 1960s and was never able to hoist a World Series championship trophy. Juan was a true workhorse. From 1962 through 1969, he averaged 285 innings pitched per season with an average of 23 complete games, nearly an average of 22 wins per season. His career 2,303 strikeouts ranks him 57th all time. It is truly remarkable that while only pitching 7 seasons in the 1960s, Sandy Koufax comes in 4th place with 1,910 strikeouts during the decade. Koufax was the only National League pitcher in the 1960s to fan 300 batters or more in a single season, and he did it 3 times, including his 1965 total of 382, which was a major league record and wouldn't be broken until Nolan Ryan topped it by just 1 in 1973. Koufax led the league in strikeouts 4 times in the 1960s. He led the league in wins 3 times. He led the league in ERA 5 times. During the decade, he had 122 complete games with 37 shutouts and an ERA of 2.36. His career 2,393 strikeouts ranks him 53rd all time. So this is a little bit odd. Sandy Koufax and teammate Don Drysdale actually finished in a dead heat for strikeouts in the 1960s with 1,910 apiece. I'm putting Drysdale in the 3rd spot ahead of Koufax because I figure he spent enough time in Sandy Koufax's shadow already, but technically they were tied for 3rd place. Drysdale led the National League in strikeouts in both 1960 and 1962. And 1962 is the year that he won his only career Cy Young Award with 25 victories and 314 innings pitched. For the decade, Drysdale won 157 games with 40 shutouts and a 2.83 ERA. For his career, Drysdale won 209 games with 49 shutouts. He had a career ERA of 2.95 and his career strikeout total of 2,486 ranks him 41st on the all-time list. Jim Bunning spent 4 seasons during the 1960s with the American League Detroit Tigers, and those 4 seasons are the only 4 seasons that anyone in the top 5 of this list spent pitching in the American League. If somebody could explain to me in the comments if they know why, if you know why, the National League was so dominant with all of the best strikeout pitchers during this decade, I would love to hear about it. So Bunny led the American League in strikeouts in 1960, and then in 1967, while pitching for the Philadelphia Phillies, he led the National League in strikeouts with 253. Bunning was a 4-time All-Star in the 1960s, and while he never won 20 games in the 60s, he won 19 games 4 times, and in 1967, he was the Cy Young Award runner-up. During the 1960s, he won 150 games with a 3.01 ERA, and he averaged 259 innings pitched per season. His 2,855 strikeouts ranks him 22nd all-time. Before I announce the 1960s Strikeout King, I want to hand out a few honorable mentions. The first honorable mention goes to New York Yankee Al Downing, who led the American League in 1964 with 217 strikeouts. Downing was probably an underappreciated pitcher in the 1960s, but during 5 different seasons, he reached double digits in wins, and he finished 25% of the 175 games that he started, and for the decade, his ERA was 3.23. Another forgotten pitcher, this time the 1967 Strikeout King, Boston Red Sox Jim Lonborg. Not only did Lonborg strike out 246 batters in 1967, he won 22 games, and he was named the American League Cy Young Award winner. Spending most of his career with the Red Sox and Phillies, he won a career total of 157 games. Last but not least, a Chicago Cub, Ferguson Jenkins. After being the 1967 and 68 strikeout king runner-up, in 1969, Ferguson Jenkins won the title himself. Jenkins didn't pitch more than a few innings before 1966, but that still gave him enough time to accumulate nearly 1,000 strikeouts for the decade. You can also find Ferguson Jenkins on my 1970s strikeout leaders video. I will mention that Jenkins' 3,192 career strikeouts ranks him 14th on the all-time list. And the number one strikeout king from the 1960s, you probably already know it, maybe, St. Louis Cardinal legend Bob Gibson. Gibson not only struck out 2,071 batters during the 1960s, but he won 20 or more games 4 times, and his ERA was under 3 5 times. In a decade that was dominated by pitching, Bob Gibson was one of the best. In 1968, Gibson enjoyed one of the greatest pitching performances in Major League Baseball history. He won 22 games, had 268 strikeouts, and a mind-numbing 1.12 ERA. Not only did he win that year's Cy Young Award, he won that season's MVP award. Arguably one of the most intimidating pitchers of all time, Gibson was a 6-time All-Star during the decade, a 5-time Gold Glove winner. He won 164 games and had an ERA of 2.74. For his career, he had 251 wins, 56 shutouts, and his 3,117 strikeouts ranks him 16th all-time.